Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the remaining 3 less common politeness levels. But first, let's take a look at this slide that we saw early on with all 7 politeness levels. In the Intro to Politeness Levels episode, we saw this list of speech levels. Haso Sote, typically found in historical dramas or religious text, used to speak very formally, such as to a king. Hashipshote, also called hapshote. This is commonly used when speaking formally or officially. Haote, typically found in historical dramas or used by the older generation, casual but not disrespectful. Hagete, typically found in historical dramas or used by the older generation, casual and friendly. Herate, commonly used when speaking casually or when writing. This is also called plain. Heote, commonly used when speaking informally, so anytime it's not formal. This can be a polite form when used correctly. This form ends with yo. And finally, heche, commonly used when speaking casually, such as with close friends. And in this lesson, we'll very briefly cover the remaining less common levels. This includes haso sote, which is typically found in historical dramas or religious text, and used to speak very formally, such as to a king. As well as haote, which is typically found in historical dramas or used by the older generation. It's casual, but not disrespectful. As well as hagete, which is also typically found in historical dramas or used by the older generation. It sounds casual and friendly. First, let's talk about haso sote. This one can be found in Korean historical dramas as well as in religious texts, and it was used to speak very formally toward a king or queen. A few common endings used in haso sote are naida. This is just a more formal version of the nida ending. This could also be 옵니다. For example, 성은이 만극하옵니다. Your grace is immeasurable, meaning thank you. Or 나이까. This is a more formal version of the 니까 ending. This one can also be 옵니까. For example, 중전마마 기침하셨나이까? Did you cough, Your Majesty, the Queen? Note that attaching 옵, which is in parentheses, shows even more politeness. The next form is 리이다, which is a more formal version of the future tense 것이다 ending. For example, 신이 하리이다. I shall do it. The next form is 사이다, which is a more formal version of the suggestion ending 읍시다. For example, 함께 가사이다. Let's go together. And finally, 소서, which is a more formal version of the 으세요 ending used to make requests. For example, 전하, 통촉하여 주시옵소서. Your Majesty, I beg your kindness. The next form that we're going to talk a bit about is haote. Now this one can also be found in historical dramas, but it's also sometimes used by the older generation. It was used to speak casually, but without being disrespectful, as if speaking to another person of the same rank, or speaking to someone of a lower rank more politely as if they were your equal. So let's look at a few common endings used in haote. First is 오 or 소. This is used for statements, questions, commands, and exclamations. To make it, you'll get a verb stem and you'll attach 오 if it ends in a vowel, or 으오 or 소 if it ends in a consonant. And when used with the verb 이다 to be, this becomes 이오. So 이오 after a consonant and just 오 after a vowel. For example, 좋소, good. Or 무엇을 하오, what are you doing? Another form is 시오, which is used nowadays in written signs and notices as a polite command ending. So this one is still around. You'll attach 으시오 after a consonant or 시오 after a vowel. For example, 당기시오, pull. Or 손대지 마시오, do not touch. The next one is 구려. This is a soft-sounding command form or for exclamations. Note that this will become 는 구려 after action verb stems. For example, 나를 도와주구려. Please help me. Or 참 맵구려. This is very spicy. The next form we're going to talk briefly about is Hagete. Now, Hagete is also used in Korean historical dramas, or occasionally nowadays by the older generation. This form is also used to speak casually and to sound friendly, but not to family members. This is used by someone of a higher rank when speaking down in a friendly way. So let's look at a few common endings used in Hagete. First, the ending 네. This is used to make statements. Note that this is not the same form as 네 used to express surprise. For example, 나는 식사하고 있네. I'm eating a meal. Next, we have the endings 가 or 나. Again, these are a little bit different than the 가 or 나 endings in how they're conjugated. These would be used to make questions. To make it, you'll attach a nian or un followed by ka after a descriptive verb stem, the same way as if you were making the regular ka ending, but for action verb stems, you'll attach 는가. Alternatively, you can use the na ending in the same way as usual. For example, 어디에 가는가? Where are you going? Or 어디에 가나? Where are you going? Next is the ending 개 or 개나. This is used to make commands. You can also use 지 말게나 to make negative commands. And this will also attach after a verb stem. Note that adding na makes this command sound a bit more friendly. For example, 자네는 어서 가서 나리와 도련님을 모셔오게나. You, hurry up and go bring the master and the young master. And we'll talk about some of these vocab words in just a moment. The next form is 세, which is used for suggestions and means let's. For example, 어서 궁으로 가세. Let's quickly go to the palace. And finally, we have the form 일세 or 아닐세. These come from the verbs 이다, to be, and 아니다, to not be. And they're used directly after a noun to make a statement or exclamation. For example, 자네 잘못이 아닐세. It is not your fault. Next, let's talk about pronouns. Nowadays, you only need 나 or 저 to say I or me, but there used to be many more ways to express this. So let's take a look at a few archaic or old pronouns. You may hear these used in historical dramas, so they might be useful to know. First, 소인. This is used by males when speaking to someone of a much higher rank. 소녀, used by a daughter when speaking to parents. 소자, used by a son when speaking to parents. 신, this would be used by a government official toward royalty, and it expresses that I am your servant. Next would be 짐, used by the king when speaking about himself. There's also the word 과인, which is used by the king when speaking about himself when he's speaking humbly. And the word 신첩, which is used by the queen or by a royal concubine when speaking humbly about herself. In addition to the many words for I or me, there also were many more words for saying you. Now, a few of these are still used today, but most of them are not, but you might still find them in historical dramas. The first one is 그대. This one is used to someone of a similar or lower rank. And today, it's still used in poems and songs. Next is 자네. This is used to someone of a lower rank or to a close friend, and it has a casual feel. Next is 나리 or 나으리. This is used by someone of a low rank to a higher rank, but not to royalty. Next is the words 마님 or mama. This is used by someone of a low rank to a much higher rank, such as royalty. Next is the word 전하, which is used toward the king, known as 임금님. Or 중전마마 or 중궁, which are words used toward the queen, known as 왕비. Or for an emperor, you can use the word 폐하, which is used toward the emperor, 황제. And finally, 경, which is used by royalty toward a subject. But we're not done with pronouns, and here are a few more common ones that you might hear used in Korean historical dramas. Starting with 누이. This means 누나 or 여동생. Next is 오라버니, which means 오빠. Next is the word 언니. This can both mean 언니 or 형. So you'll notice that its usage is different in historical dramas than nowadays. Next is 왕세자, or just 세자. This is used to refer to the crown prince. Note, however, that subjects would have used the word 저하 instead. Next is the word 도련님, which is used to refer to the son of a 양반, which is a nobleman. Next is the words 아가씨 or 아씨, which are used to refer to the daughter of a 양반. Next is the word 영감. This is used to refer to a 양반 in a high position. Note, this word can still be used as an extra respectful way to refer to an older male, as 영감님. And finally, 대감. This is used to a 양반 in the highest position. And although this isn't related to politeness levels directly, I did want to include a few extra words that you might see in historical dramas. First is the expression 만세, which is an expression meaning, may the king live 10,000 years, and similar to saying, hurrah. 갓 is a wide-brimmed hat, such as the one you see here, but traditionally this meant any kind of hat. 상투 would be a hairstyle which has a knot on top. And finally, 리 was an old measurement of distance. This can be about 393 meters, but the actual amount varied over time. I have a few more notes for this lesson, but first, try to answer this quick quiz on your own. You can pause the video here and resume it when you're ready for the answers. Here are the answers. The first one is true. 하소서체, 하오체, and Hagete are typically found in historical dramas, but are not commonly used nowadays by younger people. The next question is also true. Nowadays, 나 and 저 are used to say I or me. And the third question is false. 하소서체, 하오체, and Hagete are no longer used in regular speech by anyone. This is false because 하오체 and Hagete are still used by the older generation, and you might even see 하소서체 used in religious texts. Now, understanding archaic grammar and words is not essential to speaking Korean, but these are useful to be aware of. Knowing these archaic forms will help you to better enjoy historical dramas, to read and understand religious texts, or even to use them jokingly with your friends. And note that this lesson is only meant as a very brief overview of the remaining speech levels, and not as a detailed explanation of archaic speaking patterns. So in this lesson, we just talked a little bit about some older or less used speech levels, and in the next lesson, we'll give some final notes for this course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next lesson. 그럼 다음에 또 봐!